Let's do a walkthrough of the ISD plan document that I call the blueprint. We will skip over the ISD plan light document that was a previous assignment. Let's focus on this large one, which is 11 by 17 size sheet of paper. It includes everything to lay out the blueprint for your mini lesson project. This is a template. And as a template, it is here to guide your thinking about your particular instructional system design mini lesson. The content of this template should be erased and replaced with your own content, except for the information that's included here in the gray boxes, which are instructions to you for the information that falls within the column below it. For example, under task, here's a description of what you would do with the task is to list the tasks that accomplish the goal of the lesson, which would be identified here in the sequence that it should happen. One way to do that is a reminder that when working on a task or trying to figure out what the tasks are, you are asking yourself the question, what does the learner need to know or be able to do before they can do that particular task? And those are the items that go here, one at a time. Each row is one task, one objective, one set of instructional activities, one set of learning activities, one set of instructional responses that leads to an assessment item. And we'll go through that in a little bit more detail. Each row handles one task, one objective, just to simplify how this template works. To begin using the template, why don't we start at the top and we'll work our way through the document. Replace this information about the title with your own. Here, for background and introduction, you completed an assignment, which was your ISD plan document light. You included a lot of information about your background and introduction. Copy and paste it here. The same is true for your work on your target audience description. Copy and paste what you've already written in your goal and learner analysis document, or perhaps you've revised it and want to restart and create something new. That's okay too. The goal of your instruction came out of the same assignment for goal and learner analysis. You may have rewritten it to include information from feedback from me or feedback from your classmates. This is an example of a 3-unit course on business communications, of what the goal of that business communication class is. All of the sample text below this point is from that example classroom. I have created a suggested workflow. I wrote a note that the workflow is noted in red. So to begin completing this template, the first thing to do is here. Write in the tasks, not in this area, but the first task goes here, second task there, third task there, and so on. The second thing to do is to write the learning objective that goes with each of the tasks. Not there. Those are instructions for you to prompt you on how to think about what an objective is and how you might want to, some references if you need quick access to Bloom's taxonomy, for example. So one objective here, objective number 2, objective number 3, 4, and so on through the document. That would be the first 2 things that we did also in the ISD planning document light. Let's take a look at the first task. In this example course on business communication, the first task is simply explain what constitutes a crisis. The objective is written based upon that particular task, and it goes like this. Define the crisis communication, and crisis management from the literature. The literature is in reference to the readings that they were given for that particular course and assignment. The readings expand our work to include an instructional strategy, or clarify, an instructional activity. They are going to do the reading to inform them and help them learn the objective that is specified here. Starts with the verb define. It's a good Bloom's verb at a low level of knowledge, but adequate for an introductory course, getting students started, getting the learner ready for the language that they're about to encounter through the rest of this course. The second objective relates to the same task, which is to explain what constitutes a crisis. But here, the second objective is now included in its own row so that you as an instructional designer can either repeat or build out a different set of instructional strategies to lead the learner through. Let's take a closer look at what it says about this particular learning objective. To differentiate between crises, standard emergencies, and other day-to-day issues. Learners will do readings. They will probably continue working on and learning from assignment number 1. They have textbooks that they can reference. There will be the PowerPoint lecture that they can look at. The instructor is providing a TEDx talk that can be used to help inform them on the differences between crises, standard emergencies, and other day-to-day issues. Before we continue looking at core instructional strategies, let's take a look at a second set of tasks and objectives. In the white rows below the green ones, the task is now changed. Manage how public opinion impacts the development and progression of crisis situations. There are 3 objectives related to that particular task. The instructor who designed this felt that there were 3 objectives to help learners grasp that idea of that particular task. So they're broken out into 3 separate rows. The first of the objectives is evaluate. That's one of Bloom's taxonomy verbs at one of the higher levels. Evaluate different types of public opinion. Objective number 4, identify changes in public opinion. Number 5, assess and prioritize key stakeholders. Who is involved in the crisis? The way this instructor has designed the sequence of objectives is to go from 1 and 2, which is basic information and foundational knowledge about the course, to slightly higher levels of information that she feels is important for being able to identify public opinion and its impact on the crisis. Your objectives will be sequenced according to an order of sequencing that makes sense, either chronologically or it's grouped according to a world order, things that we commonly associate together, or it's a process order, something that you decide. Let's take a closer look at the core instructional strategies. That would be this entire column to the right of the dark gray thick line. It's comprised of 5 columns of information. This would be the third step, as I see it, in developing this blueprint. The first step was the task. The second step is writing out the learning objectives. Then in step 3, there are 4 parts labeled A. So we start with A, B, C, D. Notice that the first part of writing the core instructional strategy is determining what is the assessment of the learner. How will you know that they've actually learned that particular objective? This is called backward design. When you identify what the learning outcome is supposed to be, then you come back and you develop the instructional strategies, known as the instructional activities, the learning activities, and the instructional resources. Let's take a closer look at the assessment. The instructor for this course is expecting that for the given objective in this row and this row, students will be able to articulate their understanding of a crisis through discussion and the way that they respond to assignment number 1. That's how the instructor will determine whether or not students have learned the 2 objectives related to this task called Explain What Constitutes a Crisis. The instructor continues. They will demonstrate a realistic assessment of potential areas of risk and threat that could lead to a crisis within their organization. I expect that that description would come out in assignment number 1 and in the discussion that the instructor leads the learners through. Let's take a look at this column called Instructional Activities. This is what the instructor does to stimulate the learner to learn. What prompts them to think about the content starts with the instructor. Well, in this case, it could start with the instructor. Here we have lecture identified, as well as readings and possibly guest lecturers and videos. Readings show up for that one. We've got a lecture number 2 going on in the 3rd objective. More readings that are not specified here, but are specified in other documents. Readings, and then lecture 3. Those are the kinds of stimulating activities that the instructor does. Could be, and what do learners do in return? So this column called C, Learning Activities. This is about what the learners do in response to what they've just heard from the instruction. Either they've read something and need to respond, they've heard a lecture or need to respond, they watched a video or need to respond, maybe they did an assignment, maybe they did a project, maybe there was a quiz. They will do something in response to what the instructional activity was about from this column. So here they will have a discussion based upon the lecture and the readings. They will complete assignment 1, probably on their own. You can see for the next set of objectives in the white rows, there's discussion, and then there's a new assignment that's given, and a 4th assignment that is given. I just noticed the instructor left off assignment number 2. We won't worry about that. Here under Instructional Resources is where you would identify the types of things you need to take into the learning environment so that you as the trainer or the instructor have what's necessary to do your instructional activities and for the learners to do their learning activities. Those could be things such as readings, worksheets, textbooks, web resources, video, screencasts. Oh my goodness, the list is endless because the number of instructional resources could be quite varied. Here's a simple example from this particular instructor's course. She will have articles for them to read. They have a textbook for the course. She offers them her PowerPoint lecture presentation as a way to keep up with the information. So that's always a resource for them. She's also providing them a link to a TED Talk that will be helpful for their understanding and mastery of this particular objective. You can see that for the most part, her resources repeat in a fashion as we work through the course. She introduces case studies, which are unique articles that tell stories of a particular situation, typically with questions that allow the learner to think about how they would solve the problem in the case study. She introduces another TED Talk. Let me show you a little bit further that there are more objectives for this particular course. Of course, you recognize this ISD plan document. I have restructured it and reorganized it based upon my interpretation of the way that you responded to the original document that I had created. I attempted to make the document more clear and more manageable, along with this voice narration and explanation. I hope that it is helpful to guiding you through how to use the template effectively so that it really does become the blueprint for the rest of your development time in building out your mini lesson or your mini training. I'm open to feedback. Let me know what you think and how well this works for you.